Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, bring your love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, bring your faith. And where there's despair, bring your hope. Where there is darkness, bring your light. And where there is sadness, your joy. Oh, Divine Master, grant that we may not seek to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. Make me your instrument, beloved. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And in dying to ourselves that we live. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Of your peace. The most beautiful prayer I never wrote. It's so strange to have one of the most popular prayers in history attributed to you when you had nothing to do with writing it. But it does seem to capture something that was so important to me. To be an instrument of peace. You see, an instrument can't play itself. It's only when the instrument surrenders into the arms of the master musician that the strings begin to vibrate. And suddenly the music fills the air. The same is true for us. Only when we surrender and trust and fall back into the arms of the beloved does our life begin to sing into the universe. And that's what was so important to me, and I think just as important today. But I want to tell you about a cave. A cave on a mountain called Subasio. It's probably my favorite place on earth when I think about it. My home is only about 45 minutes, just straight down this direction. A town called Assisi. But when I'm here on the mountain, in my cave, it's like I'm 100 or even 1,000 miles away. When I'm here, I'm just Francesco Bernardone, the sinner, not the saint people make me out to be. Saints are dismissed so easily, don't you think? We tend to put them up on pedestals where they rarely belong. But I found that the closer I am to people, the more helpful I can be. Except when I'm here in my cave. Here, it's just me, my beloved, and my God. The bells of San Rufino. It's almost impossible to imagine that I could hear them from such a distance. Maybe it's just in my mind. They always pull me back to how things were before all of this started, before God turned me into a complete fool. A fool for love. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to tell you more about this cave. You see, I keep trying to slip away from the world and spend all of my time just praying here on the mountain. But God keeps pulling me back. I remember not long ago, I spoke to Claire about this. Sweet Sister Chiara. You see, I wanted to know if she thought it was God's will for me to still preach or to maybe spend my time here in my cave. You see, I trusted her because she was the first woman to give up everything and to come and follow Christ just as we were. And let me tell you, she had a lot to give up. My father may have been a rich cloth merchant, but Claire's family was the closest thing to royalty that we had in Assisi. I'll never forget Palm Sunday in 1212. Claire slipped away from her house, and she met a few of us on the plain below Assisi. We walked together to that tiny chapel of the Porciuncola. She took off her veil and offered her hair, long, beautiful hair. And I cut it off. And then I gave her a coarse habit to wear and a rope to tie around her waist. You see, I trusted her because even when my own brothers doubted the value of Lady Poverty, she never wavered. Anyway, I wanted her to tell me that it was okay for me to stay up here in my cave and pray, but she didn't. Francesco, God did not bring you to this alone, but to inspire others. It's not what I wanted to hear, but I knew she was right. But I still spend as much of my time here as I can, or any other secluded place I can find. But this cave on Mount Subasio, this is the one I remember the most, and it's why I wanted to bring all of you here tonight. But there's another cave-like chapel that I remember. The chapel of San Damiano, just a very short distance from my family's house. I I used to spend a great deal of my time there after I was released from prison in Perugia. You see, everyone thought that I would be famous one day as maybe a crusader or fighting against Perugia in the war. And that's really where it all started. Being thrown into a hole for a year until I was finally ransomed. And there I was at the chapel of San Damiano, just praying every day, even though it was just falling to ruin at that time. The tears I cried made my eyes swell shut. But then one day, as I was lying there on the cold stone floor, I looked up at the crucifix above the altar, and I saw something that both inspired and frightened me. He moved. Jesus moved and looked down at me. Everyone said that it was just my imagination, but I swear it was true because then I heard him speak. His voice was so soft and powerful, and the words I heard changed my life forever. I remember when you called me, I was lying on the ground, so lost my eyes could barely see, and my ears heard not a sound. Then in the quiet of that small chapel, I felt my heart rejoice. For then I saw you stand before me and heard the whisper of your voice. Go, Francis, and rebuild my church. Can't you see? It's falling down into ruin. It will soon be gone unless you choose to hear the sound of the poor and the broken. They're all reaching toward you now. So go, Francis, and rebuild my church. Your heart will show you how. Your heart will show you how. Go and rebuild my church, which, as you can see, is falling to ruin. Those are the first words I heard him speak. But I was so naive, I thought he literally meant the chapel I was standing in, not the whole church. You see, it was a terrible time. Not much different than today, actually. People were losing their faith everywhere you looked, and Europe was heading in a dramatic direction. But for me, it was a wake-up call. The first thing I did was I went and I borrowed a horse that was carrying cloth from my father's warehouse. Now, some people say I stole it. I say I borrowed it. And I took all of that cloth and I sold it and I brought it back to the priest at San Damiano so that he could begin to rebuild. And of course, He didn't take the money because he was so afraid of my father, and all of his anger was directed at me. He grabbed me and he threw me into a tiny hole in the bottom of our house, and I stayed there for 3 days before my mother finally had mercy on me and let me out. And then all I could think about was getting back to San Damiano. And that's when, I'll never forget, I began to beg for stones from rich Assisians so that I could rebuild the church. And that's when my father lost all patience. He wanted a son who was an example, not a disgrace. He grabbed me and he dragged me through the streets of Assisi until we finally came to the bishop's palace. He threw me at the bishop's feet. I didn't build a business for decades to have some imbecile just throw it away. I demand that your grace do his job and make an example of him, even if it means losing my own son. Half of Assisi was there to see what would happen, because, of course, it was a time in which anything could happen. I could be thrown back into prison, or worse, much worse. But none of that mattered to me, because the Francis I knew was gone, and so was everything that was once so important to me. I began to take off my clothes, all of them, and I laid them at my father's feet. Father, I give back to you everything that was once yours, your clothes, your possessions, and your name too. And I now say only, Our Father, who art in heaven. And then I walked naked into a new world. My Father in heaven, holy is your name. I am that, for you created me, and I choose to be the same as the poor and the broken. I give everything to them now. They are yours, and they are so holy. It is my vow but to follow you. Wherever you may lead me, I will go. Yes, I will go. And I believe that you will feed me, and I will know. Yes, I will know the joy of the sparrow and the lilies of the field. The path I walk is so narrow, but you are with me, and I am healed. Wherever you may lead me, I will go. Yes, I will go. And I believe that you will feed me, and I will know. Yes, I will know your great love. like a child today. Don't overcomplicate what is simple. Yeah, so simple. Love's power in you is strong. You don't need to wait so long. It's simple. Yeah, so simple. I do believe that you can finally see what I've tried to get you to understand.